please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Okay, before anything, Royal Enfield has launched two new bikes, the Thunderbird 350X and the 500X. The bikes have been introduced at a price of 1.56 lakh and 1.98 lakh respectively. Look at those snazzy new bikes there. Ronojoy Banerjee caught up with Rudra Tej Singh, the president of Royal Enfield, to get a sense of their growth momentum. Listen in.
Good news is our momentum continues. Our order books, our demand curve still exceeds the supply curve. And I'm really glad, I'm smiling because the number of times I've said this over the last few years, it feels good that we are able to create latent demand and catching up with supply. It's a nice problem to have. But we are, as you said, we are building up capacity every month, every quarter, every 2 quarters.
Once your third manufacturing plant at Vallam Vadagal, is that how you pronounce it?
That's very well.
Once that goes upstream, what, 800,000 odd units? That will be the overall.
Yeah, we will be in excess of 850,000. We are
850,000 units once the third plant is up and running, and it's running.
The third plant is up and running.
It's up and running, yeah. But once it reaches its maximum capacity, 850,000 units.
Honestly, we are reaching that capacity very quickly, so we will be able to ramp up very quickly to that number.
So then, are you hopeful that you'll be able to sort of maintain the growth momentum that you've had now that is going to free up capacity? And you said it's a good problem to have when supply lags.
No, we are very confident that we will. I think it's not just about hopeful, but we have a booking trend, which gives us the confidence. If we didn't have a booking trend of order books being so strong, we would be less confident. But I'm very confident that we'll be touching the capacity sooner than later.
You know, how confident are you? I mean, are you looking for acquisition opportunities, especially now that Ducati is done? Is that something that it still excites Royal Enfield as you now look to become, what, 50% of the medium duty bike? Is that what you've said in the next 10 years? That's
my
kind of
personal
market share.
view.
So, is from an acquisition standpoint, is that still something that Royal Enfield is keeping its eyes open?
Well, let me put it this way, and I will talk about Royal Enfield and not Eicher Motors. As Royal Enfield, we are still a 7%, while we are doing very well, we're still a 7% brand in India. We have a lot of headroom in India just by sticking to our knitting of what Royal Enfield stands for. And that's what we are focusing on. Do we grow inorganically? If we have opportunities to grow the narrative of pure motorcycling, we will figure out our options. I cannot comment on other motorcycle acquisitions, etc., because that's not something I focus on. But definitely, we have headroom in India. We have a huge headroom around the world by just doing what we are doing well. And that's really been our focus.
But you look at an opportunity if it comes your way.
We are always looking for opportunities to grow the mindset of pure motorcycling. Let's put it this way. It doesn't have to come through inorganic growth. There's a lot of organic growth that Royal Enfield must focus on. That's my view.
All right, so that was the word coming in from Royal Enfield. Let's take a look at the markets today, and it's in the red. So both the Sensex as well as Nifty down 0.6% as we speak. And as far as the Bank Nifty is concerned, that's taking a knock of over 1%. It's the major private sector banks like ICICI Bank as well as HDFC Bank which are really dragging down the markets today. But two counters that I really want to take a look at is Bharti Infratel. That has seen a sudden rise and is doing pretty well in trades today in an otherwise weak market, so closer to the high point of the day. But on the other hand, the parent company Bharti Airtel is touching the low point of the day. So those stocks on my radar. Sonia.
Yes, indeed. You know, you spoke about the Bank Nifty. The Bank Nifty now is just 300 points away from that 200-day moving average, which is 24,700. In fact, less than 300 points away. So that's been the big problem with the market, the way the Bank Nifty has fallen. And on the flip side, the support is coming from the IT space this afternoon. So Infosys is at the high point. So it's like a tug of war between the banks on the downside and IT on the upside. But let's take a look across the globe. Asian markets ended in the red, with the Japanese index falling over 1.5% on a larger than expected fall in the Japanese industrial output data. The Bank of Japan's decision to trim purchases of super long bonds also soured sentiment by boosting the yen. Greater China markets also extended losses as the China PMI data that came in early in the morning missed the forecast. European markets are expected to open sharply lower following comments from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell.
And speaking of the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, well, in his first appearance before the US Congress, Powell has indicated that the Fed plans to hike rates 3 times this year and may be inclined to a 4th time as well.
These interest rate and balance sheet actions reflect the committee's view that gradually reducing monetary policy accommodation will sustain a strong labor market while fostering a return of inflation to 2%. Engaging the appropriate path for monetary policy over the next few years, the FOMC will continue to strike a balance between avoiding an overheated economy and bringing PCE price inflation to 2% on a sustained basis. It's very typical for the yield curve to flatten as short-term rates come up as the economy strengthens, and I don't see a particularly large. There's always a risk of a recession at any given point in time. I don't see it as at all high at the moment.
Hi guys, welcome back. You're still watching Business Lunch on CNBC TV18. It's still down and out for the markets, so still 200 points lower on the Sensex. In terms of stocks, I was talking about how some of these IT names are holding up. You also have pharma that's not doing too badly. So all your pharma stocks, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, all looking pretty good this afternoon, up about 1%. But on to the big exclusive today. Our colleague Kritika Saxena spoke to Rajesh Gopinathan, the MD and CEO of TCS, and began by asking him if TCS will continue to deliver the growth that is ahead of the industry average. Here's a slice of that interesting conversation.
It depends on what the industry is. I think if you take the industry as technology services providers, we definitely are.
Yeah.
But NASSCOM now represents a much wider variety.
Yeah, yeah.
There are delivery centers of foreign companies here. There are captive units of other industries here.
Yeah.
They're all getting clubbed into and they're being called part of the industry. Hardly part of the industry. That's not their business.
Yeah.
So in our competitive
anymore?
set, I think we are quite confident about it. The rest of it depends on company dynamics and rather than competitive dynamics. So we don't want to comment about it.
Okay, but will you be within that range or higher?
Again, as I said, I don't want to use that as a benchmark.
Okay,
it's not the right one.
For FY18 then, Rajesh, what is the outlook like? You're ending on a positive note. In terms of the scale and the deal momentum, are things looking better as you go into FY19? Is FY19 looking like a better year than FY18?
So every time around this time of the year you ask that question.
I always ask you if the next coming year is going to be better. And you often do give an answer, Rajesh.
Yeah, okay. I need to be more careful than that then. See, the momentum is there, as you've clearly seen from the deal side of it. And from an industry perspective, various industry groups are coming together. We have called out the bottoming out in retail.
Yeah.
And as you've seen, some of the deals are coming from that space.
And you've said the big challenge, that is BFSI, another 2 quarters left and that should start getting better.
I think so. We are much more constructive on insurance as we see this. And banking is still an area that's work in progress. And we need to see how that turns out. So other than that, most of the other industries are actually doing quite well.
At a group level, Chandra is working on increasing synergies. As you look at going to the next level, building the scale further, how important is synergies across Tata companies, the other IT companies, there's Tata Elxsi, there's Tata Technologies. Have you started those synergies already with the other IT companies in the group?
I think the chairman's message on simplification and synergy and scale is very powerful.
Yeah.
And technology per se could act as the single most integrating factor across the group.
Exactly.
So there's a new chief digital officer in the group, and thinking is also becoming much more widespread as to how do we optimize and how do we enable technology to act as a fabric that integrates across the entire group. So we are very excited about it and how do we participate in it.
All right, so that's the big corporate voice coming in on the show. But take a look at one particular counter, Kalpataru Power, on my radar, and that has seen a sharp surge, 2.5% up, and that particular stock is on my radar. Now moving on to some other, all right, so that's the stock that I was talking about. Now moving on, CBI arrests Karti Chidambaram, the son of former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram, in connection with its probe in the INX media case. Now, Karti will be produced in the Delhi High Court today evening, and let's get in Jude Sanith, our colleague who's been tracking all the developments on this case. Tell us, Jude, what's the latest?
Well, even as I speak to you, Karti Chidambaram is being flown to Delhi. He left Chennai on a 10:40 a.m. flight. To quickly recap the events of the morning, Karti Chidambaram was arrested early this morning at the Chennai airport. When he came back from London, was apprehended by CBI officials at the Chennai airport, of course. Remember, the arrest, the timing of the arrest is quite important and significant, given that it comes only days after P. Chidambaram filed a writ petition in the Supreme Court claiming that his family was being unfairly targeted by the government. Chidambaram did say that as far as dealings with as far as the INX media is concerned, his family had no dealings in the case, and that the continual summons by the Enforcement Directorate with regard to his family was tantamounting to harassment. Just to give you a bit of perspective, Karti Chidambaram, remember, is being apprehended in the INX media case, where he is being alleged, it is alleged that he had unfair dealings with the FIPB. Now, interestingly enough, the arrest also comes at a time when P. Chidambaram has also been very vocal in his criticism of the government. He has gone about criticizing the government's budgets, the demonetization scheme, and the GST, and even in a statement immediately following the arrest, Chidambaram stated that the government was conducting these arrests by hand-holding the CBI simply because they wished to silence voices of dissent, much like Chidambaram's himself. So that's pretty much what Chidambaram is alleging in the aftermath of the Karti Chidambaram arrest. What we are given to understand is that Karti himself will be produced in front of a CBI court a little later this afternoon. In fact, I spoke to the DMK spokesperson A. Saravanan only a little earlier in the morning, who agreed with Chidambaram and said that the government was not willing to take criticism, and hence the arrest, also in an attempt to deflect attention from the PNB scam. Let's listen to that soundbite.
The timing of the arrest raises very important questions. We have seen the Nirav Modi scam taking the center stage. It gives an apprehension that probably the arrest has been timed, arrest has been made to ensure that all those scams where the government feels the heat goes to the back door. Probably that is the reason. And if we look at these kind of white-collar offences, the Supreme Court has time and again clearly given instructions that arrest should not be resorted to. And why are they arresting him now? See, whether he is guilty or innocent, that has to be proven in a court of law. By this arrest, what are they going to achieve?
Another very important point Chidambaram makes is the fact that these arrests are conducted in order to silence the critics of the government, including Mr. Chidambaram himself, detractors, and that this government does not quite have the stomach for criticism. Is that necessarily a point that you agree with?
See, we have clearly seen how this government, the BJP government, is not a government which takes criticism in the right spirit. We have seen that. We have seen how so many people have been silenced earlier, the journalists intimidated. We have seen all that. Probably what Mr. Chidambaram says has some credence into it.
Okay. Another very important point that he makes is that at no point of time was his family involved with regard to finance ministry dealings, with regard to the INX case. Given that the Congress government, your party included, who was in alliance with them, has been accused of dynastic dealings and dynastic policies in the 10-year-long UPA tenure, do you feel that Mr. Chidambaram is justified when he makes that statement?
See, we don't know. I'm not aware of the factual circumstances under which Mr. Chidambaram has made that statement. That is for him to defend his factual position. But the arrest, when we come to that arrest, I think it is only a diversionary ploy.
Do you feel this is an all-out war between Mr. Chidambaram and the BJP? Is that how this is being seen amongst political circles?
See, if you want an unbiased view or an objective view of it, we have seen how Mr. Chidambaram in the recent past has punctured holes in a very, very enlightening way. Let it be the budget, let it be the GST, let it be the demonetization. He has been the vocal critic, and what he has been saying is gaining traction. After this year, all these people predicted all this would happen when these schemes were implemented and rolled out, and now what they have said earlier is coming true. So probably the government wants to blunt their voices, wants to make those voices irrelevant, and that is why I think all this is happening.
Okay, well, big crackdown against the opposition coming in over there. But we'll take a break on that note. Coming up on the other side, some lighter moments. The Mobile World Congress is underway in Barcelona. We'll tell you what's latest on the technology world when we return.
And take a look at the markets right now. Of course, further downfall has been arrested. The markets are pretty much stabilizing at these points. But some of the stocks which have been seeing some bit of recovery, giving some strength to the overall market at this point in terms of its contribution are stocks like Cipla. Take a look at that in the last few minutes of trade. That has seen a slight bit of recovery and therefore adding to some bit of contribution in the last half an hour of trade. UPL is another stock which is also trying to inch back and is supporting the overall market. So yes, the market's almost stable at those points, and Bank Nifty remains the biggest concern with 1.5% drop. On to a CNBC TV18 exclusive then. We learned from sources that the IRDA has held back the issuance of final approval for Reliance Capital's health insurance foray. And Yash Jain joins us with all the details. Yash, why has it been held back?
Well, before I really get to the contention, let's just understand where has Reliance Health Insurance approval process reached so far. So in September 2017, they received their R1 or the first level approval, and then in December 2017, they received their R2 or the second level approval from IRDA, which means that they have 2 out of the total 3 approvals required to initiate the business operations. Now here we are given to understand that the insurance regulator IRDA has decided to hold back the final approval, which is R3, which is the most crucial one before the company can start its business operations. Now, why has this final approval been held back from the insurance regulator? We are given to understand that that has happened because the parent company, Reliance Capital, is yet to receive the CIC license, which is the core investment company license from the Reserve Bank of India. Now, what's a CIC or a CIC license? Essentially, for a company like Reliance Capital, which has investments in over 20 companies from diverse sectors, RBI has mandated such companies to really alienate these investments in a CIC or a core investment company model, so that any threat from these investments does not impact the capital in the NBFC business or the existing life and the general insurance business. That license is yet to come in for Reliance Capital, and as a result of which IRDA has taken a firm stand saying that till the time Reliance Capital does not submit that CIC or the core investment company license, they would not issue the R3 or the final approval, which is a precondition for Reliance Health to start its business operations.
Okay, Yash, thanks a lot for giving us all those details. Moving on, while many smartphone makers have tried to make bigger screens, we've seen all of them, Chinese company ZTE has doubled down the effort, quite literally. The company has created a smartphone with a dual foldable screen. In this edition of Tech Toys from the Mobile World Congress 2018, our colleague Megha Vishwanath gets you a hands-on.
Mobile World Congress, an annual event for the world of smartphones that pretty much sets the tone for the coming year, has a lot of room for quirks. While I was walking around the floor to find out the latest and the trendiest devices, I stumbled upon one of the quirkiest, which has been launched by ZTE. It's called the Axon M, and essentially what this is that it's a foldable smartphone. We've spoken about a foldable smartphone or the possibility of one many times on Tech Toys, and ZTE has made it into reality. So essentially what it does is that it gives you an additional phone that you can use to mirror your screen, or you can use it as a double screen. One of the most interesting things is that there is essentially no back camera. There's only one camera that can be flipped into a selfie or a primary camera mode. It's very interesting, it's very quirky, and it has been priced at $725 in the United States, which is approximately 50,000 rupees in India. I'm not sure when this device would make its way to India, and I'm not even sure how many people would be willing to spend 50,000 bucks on a foldable smartphone. One main reason is that it is quirky, yes, but it packs in specs from last year. For instance, it packs in a Qualcomm Snapdragon 821 processor. The new phones that have been launched at this very platform pack in the latest 845 processor. So for those of you who care on what's inside your smartphone, may not find value in this, but as I said, this floor houses everything, the latest, the trendiest, and the quirkiest, and this is definitely grabbing a lot of attention right here in Barcelona at MWC.
Oh yes, and even on Twitter, there's been so much, excitement about this foldable smartphone. Let's see. You never know. 50,000 rupees. I mean, it's much cheaper than what the new iPhones are for sure. So let's see whether this picks up in terms of attention. But for now, let's just take a quick look on the markets before we wrap up for the day. There hasn't been much progress really in terms of a move either way. So where we were at the start of trade, we're absolutely right there, down about 0.6%. The good part is that we haven't seen a further deceleration. But the bad part is no recovery either. So the Bank Nifty is still down almost 400 odd points. And as I mentioned, 24,700 is the 200 DMA. That's an important level to watch on the Bank Nifty. We're just about 200 points away from that. But the big, national development. Karti Chidambaram is expected to arrive at the Delhi airport very soon. So we will be getting you some live visuals of that. Remember, he will be produced before the CBI court around 2 p.m. So that's the latest coming in there. We'll keep tracking that story very closely. From Nisha, myself and the entire team, that's all the time we have on Business Lunch. Keep it with CNBC TV18. Midcap Radar comes up.